So the jungle, there's lots of reasons why Upton Sinclair wrote this book. But why we need to know it is about the idea of regulation. Does government have a role to protect the safety of food, to also protect workers and the environment they live in? Do we have the assumption that we can eat something and that won't kill us? Can we assume that? Is that a rational assumption? Or is it laissez-faire? Buyer beware. No government influence, no government regulation of competition. If you buy something that makes you sick, you won't buy it again and they'll go out of business. Or do we have a reasonable assumption that what we eat will not kill us all the time? And so he is going to be describing working conditions, but he also describes how food was going to be made. And it hit people. Wow, did it hit people. And so when we're done with this, we will spend a day and talk about food and talk about regulation. And the reason this is so important is that the populists, but especially the progressives, want regulation. What's the best way to convince people that regulation might be important? Well, we all eat food. My assumption is almost all of you eat food at some time. We can all comprehend eating something that makes us sick. We can see it. Regulation in other products is very difficult to see. We don't know what's going on inside. Food, we eat it. But do you really know what's going on inside? So all the food we buy, we have no idea. We're just hoping for the best. It was really funny because second period, someone had a snack and they were eating like a beef jerky thing. You want to talk about rolling the pie. You have no idea what's in there. All I can tell you, it's vague meat. Or when you go to lunch and, hey, I'm gonna go get some McNuggets. Vague chicken parts. But it is. We got a home. And so people can understand. So I originally going to make this due Thursday, but since I was gone, I'm bumping everything back one day. So this will be due on Friday. There are questions. So think about cutthroat competition, desire to cut money. And when you do that, underline examples of 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Remember, 1 and 2. And then on a separate sheet, answer 3, 4, 6, 8, and 9. 3, 4, 6, 8, and 9 on the separate sheet of paper. Just turn the page so you can see the questions. We're not answering every one. You'll get the idea, but think about cutting costs. Are they producing food? Wow, you'll read about it. Do they really want to put human parts in lard they're selling to people? Not necessarily. But they want to save money. They're trying to cut costs. So think cutthroat competition. It's a good little story. So 3, 4, 6, 8, and 9. Is that right? 3, 4, 6, 8, and 9. Second sheet of paper. If you're trying to cram it into here, I will not take it. It's fair enough. All right. Friday. Everyone got that due Friday? It's really good. And that'll be a day, if everything goes right, we'll talk about food. And then that'll be a good day to go out and get a hot dog for lunch. Yes. We do it on Friday. Yeah, this period will take the last 15 minutes. So Friday we have registration. Oh, before we get to that, since I didn't realize it's going to be gone, if you still have to make up a list, you have to come talk to me. I'll make that up and then I'll get them all back. If people are doing really well in the short IDs, I just got a few of the multiple choice matches. That won't take long at all. Next. So everyone got this is due Friday? All right. Next, registration was yesterday. And Ms. Meldrum was here, she talked about it. And it took a period. And so a lot of you already have a pretty good idea. But let me tell you something about next year. First off, don't worry right now. If you look at a class and say, oh, there's a conflict this year, so I can only take 1 or 2 classes. Every year they change schedules. Every year they move classes around. So don't worry about what's scheduled this year and think about what's next year. fact, if you ever go up to Mr. Zanto's office, there's a big thing on the wall with all the classes in it. And he will move around and bounce around and change it. So if there's a conflict now, don't worry. If you want to take 2 classes and there's a conflict, don't worry about it. Sign up for both. You can always adjust later. But take advantage of what we have now. Hey, you're never going to get another chance again like this. You want to take a class that's offered like this in a life, something you might be interested or not sure about, something to kind of enrich your educational experience. That really does matter. You don't get another chance to do it for free for the rest of it. You have to pay. Maybe a lot. So take advantage of it. So if you're not sure how many classes you're going to take a full bulk. You can always go back and change it. Take it. Especially some of these electives that if there are a lot of conflicts, if they don't have enough students taking, they won't offer it. And don't be in that position where you look back and say, you can always go back and adjust. It takes them no time at all. Sign up for what you want. And I teach one elective. It's a really fun class. It's a great class called Special Topics. But there's a lot of great electives. So many good ones in the business. So many great fine arts credits. Just spectacular stuff that's offered in science. English has some more of these different classes that can be offered. We have really good electives. Take advantage of it because you won't get another chance. And trust me, you think, oh, I can get out early. And seriously, learn something, make yourself a little better, or sit around and do nothing. Could be wrong. I get it. That's I get this time off. Think about it just a little bit. Take advantage of what we offer. So tomorrow I'll tell you about what the social studies department does. We have a lot of great electives, and there are in every department a lot of great electives. We have certain really good ones in the social studies. I'll tell you a little bit more about it tomorrow. Sound good? We have psychology, which for reasons I can't explain in the social studies department. Philosophy, hopefully, will be back this year. We have sociology. We have Western Civ. We have AP Euro, and special topics. So a lot of great electives. All right, let's go ahead and get busy. We finished. Where did we finish here? Did we get to? Who else not? Oh, first off, 1896, one of the most important elections in history. Who did the Republicans nominate? Who? Not Cleveland. Well, he was the Democrat. McKinley. And who was the boss of the Republican political machine? Marcus Ham. Gold standard. Who gave the great Cross of Gold speech and got the Democratic nomination by acclamation? William Jennings Bryan. And, I put pictures up here. Philip Petit, I couldn't remember his name. That's the high wire artist, the French high wire artist. But this is him on the Twin Towers, over 100 stories up. He broke in with some help. This is when he fell. There's no harness. I mean, 50 stories would be fine for me, but 100, that's too many. Crazy. Is there anybody here who say, I'll do it? Would anybody here try high wire, like if it was just a few feet up? Okay, there's a few. Even me, that's even too much for me. But okay, we got the populist nominating Brian. Did I explain this cartoon at all? So the populist nominated Brian. This is where we'll quit. Does this sound good for everybody? And this tries to imply that the populists are swallowing the Democrats. It's the other way around. Here's a populist cartoon trying to show why they picked Brian, but it shows also their biggest problems. So first off, here's the Republican Party and the Cross of Gold. Who's being crucified on it? Labor. Crown of thorns on the brow of labor. So that's very much Christian illusions, which makes sense. It still is a majority, very much a majority Protestant Christian population. Hannah putting the cross on, and I love the little picture, McKinley in his pocket, like little Napoleon, like a little kid. But here shows their prejudice. So remember their intent, the populists, there's this anti-Semitic underline, anti-Jewish, because of this medieval myth that Jews ran the banking system and were money grubbing and stealing money through high interest rates. The Rothschild family had one of the biggest banking family in Europe, still does, and they are Jewish. People all over. And so here implying the Rothschilds have all the money and the power, and it's a horrific caricature of Jews in this populist cartoon, where this would fit very well in Nazi Germany in 1940. So it shows their problems, their anti-Semitism that they could not get past. So a lot of people believe this, that the populists were swallowing the Democrats. It was the other way around. This would be the end of the populists. The balloon is collapsing. They're going to be absorbed into the Democrats. Now, you'll see elements of this with like the presidency of Woodrow Wilson running William Jennings Bryan. But where you're really going to see the populists is in 1932 with the election of Franklin Roosevelt. And the ironic twist of fate, Roosevelt, old money, old elite, and he would be the best known American populist president. Interesting how, life is complex. Well, their slogan, free silver. And free silver, like the gold standard, meant more. Gold standard was quasi-fair. Free silver, inflation, that's also called loose money. Hey, what body today has the most control over the money supply? Do you remember? The Federal Reserve. And it's also antitrust. Workers' rights, like an 8-hour workday, working conditions, William Jennings Bryan proposed Social Security, which is an old age pension. Trust me, you'll think about it down the road. And it couldn't, though, get past its anti-urban bias. Even though it talked about helping the workers, it couldn't get past it. There should be one other thing, too. Employers were making it very clear to their employees, you vote for Bryan, and you're going to destroy the economy, which is an underlying threat. You vote for Bryan, and you'll lose your job. So, it soon devolved into gold versus silver. Gold bug, silver bug. And it became like a thing to wear a little pin of a bug. You see the little picture of Bryan McKinley. And so gold standard presented as stability, solid money. Where the free silver people tried to say, we're fighting for regular people and a better life. And it should be clear, both of them were a little bit off on what they say. Free silver would not be a panacea of just having inflation, and the gold standard was not stable. But that's the way they presented it. Well, candidates for president did not campaign for themselves. And William McKinley was very much that way. He ran, they call it, looking back at it, the front porch campaign. He was governor of Ohio, and he just stayed in the governor's mansion in Columbus. Here is a picture of the governor's mansion in Columbus. And the idea was that the issues of state were too important. And so he dealt with them. So occasionally he gave a speech or appeared on the front porch and waved. But he did not actively campaign. Now, the reason we mention that is they never actively campaigned before this. But it was such a contrast from William Jennings Bryan. Bryan was the first major candidate for president of the United States to actively campaign for themselves. He actively crisscrossed the country by train and gave speeches, shook hands, and met the people. He campaigned. I was typing this, and my finger hit the all caps. And I like the way it looks, so I liked it. Doesn't that look good? Don't you like that? That's fun. He actively gave speeches, went into the crowd. Here he is at a big meeting this is in North Dakota. Here he is from a window in Illinois. When he went to Butte, I guess it was huge. You can imagine the miners in Butte loved Bryan for that whole thing about silver. And he would give this rip-roaring speech like an evangelical preacher, a little bit like a Spots of Gold speech. They would get people up and cheering. I mean, the populace really felt they were going to win. the way the crowds were. And the thing is, every candidate after realized we're going to have to kind of do this. Not completely, but more and more campaigning than radio, TV, etc. will hit. This is him in 1908, and I just enjoy this picture of him up there getting the crowd going. The problem is this is his third time running for president. Two things. First off, they have a picture up here showing when the comb over still worked. It's, hey, it happens. Some people go bald within like 19. So he's got his hair combed. Yeah, right here. You can see the part right above his ear. But I like that picture for one reason. Geez, I've heard this stuff before. This is the 10th time I heard the same thing. So I think that's really funny. Well, the thing is that when he supported antitrust, workers' rights, Social Security, civil or women's rights, direct election of senators, when he proposed those things, what was he called? What? Yes. They accused him of being a dangerous radical, aka a bomb-throwing anarchist. And that cartoon's trying to show the motley crew of radicals, the Silver Syndicate, anti-alcohol, the Prohibition movement, this motley crew. And look at the forces of national honor, the Republicans. And it was quite effective. This was also the last election where the vast majority of voters still voted in public. There wasn't secret ballots anywhere. And so in the East, the heavily industrialized areas, employers got their workers together and marched them to the voting booth and watched them. That's not a booth, but I mean, marched them to go vote and watch them vote. Sure you want to vote that way? Sure. So no secret ballots, the vote was manipulated. And okay, Bryan is red. The Republicans are blue, the Democrats are red. Once again, my honoriness of the red state, blue state thing that it's states. So you can see all the states that Bryan won. It looks like a lot of land. Montana, very populous state. Like I said, vastly different than today. But if you look where McKinley won, this is the populations, of course. More electoral votes because more members of the House, and McKinley won. It wasn't a huge victory, but it was a big victory. But why is this election so important? This was a hinge moment. Everything changed right here. You can see a switch. It wasn't just gold defeating silver like this cartoon shows. It showed so many different things. First off, urban and financial interests come to dominate. It was already happening, but you could really see it happening then. You could really see it happening. And sound money. But also, the importance of money. Once you have candidates actively campaigning for themselves, they begin to realize that the more money you have in your campaign, the more you can get your message out and portray the image you want. For example, William Jennings Bryan raised what would have been thought of as an unprecedented amount, $700,000. A lot of money back then, more than any other campaign in American history before that had raised. Before that, John D. Rockefeller, what's his company? You remember his company? Standard Oil. He alone gave McKinley's campaign over $700,000. He alone gave that much. So Bryan had money if it was 1892. That's a lot of money. It's nothing. McKinley had 5 times more money. And that would be decisive. So Bryan could go give small little speeches, a few hundred, maybe even a couple thousand people. For McKinley's campaign to put posters, get these pins out, banners, parades, newspaper articles. And why did McKinley do this? He didn't want his monopoly to open. He didn't want, thank you. He wanted the same laissez-faire policy, just like every other big businessman gave. And we see it to this day. They give money because they want something, and they would get it. But this would also be the roots of 20th century liberalism. Now, like I said before, liberal and conservative are so misused now that they hardly have meaning. But liberalism in the context of what Franklin Roosevelt called it, an active government that will reform capitalism. They are capitalists, but they will try to lessen the edges or lessen the potential abuses of monopoly, smooth out the edges to make it more worthwhile. Here is a more democratic cartoon of when McKinley is president, there's Uncle Sam, and who will get the power? The monopolists. So this will be the anti-monopoly group. Now, this is the United States was a liberal economic country. You were born in conservatism, very conservative. We're exceedingly conservative. So this is conservative. Then it was more liberal. We are different for various reasons. Hey, we'll get to it. We'll get to the 1970s. So this will lead to, okay, they're not the same, but they're very much influenced by the populists. The progressive movement, which is coming up very soon, the New Deal of the 1930s and the New Deal era, all the way through to the 80s, and the last vestige of this old liberalism under Lyndon Johnson in the 60s, called the Great Society. We will get to all of these. Also, one more little bit of influence. L. Frank Baum would write a book that most people think is a children's book. It is for children, but it's also for adults. There'll be many sequels. The sequels aren't very good, but the original's a good story. There'd be like 3 movies made in the teens and in the 20s, but the most famous movie would be made in 1938. Called Wizard of Oz. You ever heard of that movie? Ever heard? Anybody ever read the book? Book's a good book. It's a good book. It's a good story. He wrote it for many reasons, but it is also a parallel of populism. It follows the populist movement. It's an allegory. The characters represent people and events or industries going on at this time. So, for example, Dorothy, where's she from? Small little farm in Kansas. Farmers. Lots of farmer reference. Industrial worker, just seen as part of the machine. No heart. Farmers were considered to be stupid, pigs, yokels. And yet, who's the smartest one in the story? The scared. Politicians talk big, but we're scared to do anything. O's, hounds. What? Even know what color these shoes were? Not in the book. Silver. Silver. What's the brick robe? What color is it? Gold. Which looks like a nice robe, but it's actually, if you read the book or see the movie, it's a complete disregard. Falling apart. The Emerald City, green downs. Oz, towns. There's so many references to populism. Who has seen The Wizard of Oz? It's a great movie. It is truly great. And I think a lot more fun if you kind of get the popular element and say, oh, I did it. Flying monkeys over elephants. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. So like in special topics with class votes on topics, we do like a couple. And we're gonna do a couple of movies, we do a little analysis, and we might have a couple different movies, but like we do movie alongs. And we watch it and kind of build it. Fun unit. We're doing horror movies and the Cold War, right? How the Cold War affected horror movies. And we're gonna watch a horror movie today. Come on. A great one, Invasion of the Bodies. Speaking of that, here is a little blurb in the paper about the Wizard of Oz. And I think this is like one of the greatest things ever written. If you have seen the movie or read the book, that's true. It's so awesome. I love it. She was the first person she met. And then kill again. Imperialism, new heading. Imperialism. So we've talked about imperialism before. Oh, by the way, the little scene behind, we'll have a bigger picture of it, but that is the Battle of Manila Bay, 1898. So imperialism, and do you remember what imperialism is? To build a what? Empire. Empire for profit. Empire for profit. The profit could be money, could be prestige. There's lots of reasons to build. But this idea of prestige, look at the empire I have. And we see this to this very day. I'm not directly thinking of Greenland, but I am thinking of Greenland. Look what I did. It's not going to happen, but there's still that talk. So, the economic position of imperialism is mercantilism. Just to review, remember, you want to maximize exports, accumulate gold, get colonies to suck the wealth out, raw materials, tax them, make them buy your stuff. Mercantilism, just to review. So basically, you want to become as self-sufficient as possible and then make other countries buy your stuff. There are two different types of imperialism. Once again, this is review. Colonial imperialism, the kind of imperialism you think about, which you should think of the American Revolution, where a country literally takes over an area, they put their flag, it's ours. They colonize it, take over the government, take over the country, say it's part of their empire. And also send some of their people to live and settle there. Now, that really happened in Australia and Americas because of disease. But here are two examples of colonial imperialism, which really, I think, shows the exploitation pretty well. Okay, this is in the British colony of India, going at the end of the 19th century. Actually, today, it would be in Bangladesh. But she's a colonist. I don't think there's any doubt who has the power there. She's carried around by the people who should own the country. This is in German West Africa, today called Namibia. And this is to show the brutal treatment of the Germans of the local population. This is kind of shocking. This is after they rebelled against German rule, and they brutally enslaved them to literally work them to death. They didn't call it, but that's what happened. And you can see the chains. That's colonial imperialism. Suck the wealth, and then I should add, leave ruin. The other kind of imperialism was economic. And that is to literally take over the economy, to trade, coerce deals to make them give you advantages on natural resources, etc. But they're still technically independent. So that's a Cuban cartoon right there. Now it shows Uncle Sam and his tentacles, so this anti-American policy, but scooping up the Caribbean, including Cuba, as part of the American economic empire. And this still goes on today. I mean, what country did the US just a couple of weeks ago kidnap their leader and coerce them to sign deals? Venezuela. The US came and took the leader and left. Because, Venezuela, and corrupt state, a lot of issues there, but still, kidnapped their leader. And then we are selling their oil, and then President Trump is keeping the oil in a secret bank account in Qatar. It is really the textbook example of economic imperialism. Trust me, the money's not going to the American public. So we're not stealing it for us, they're stealing it for a few individuals. But anyways, George Washington, way back in 1797, warned about this in his farewell address. I've mentioned the farewell address before. There are two farewell addresses we'll have to know for the AP exam, etc. Washington, and the next one will be Dwight Eisenhower in 1961. We'll get to it. But The rest of them are basically presidents saying, aren't I great? So you don't need to write down, this is part of it, but you need to write down this. He is avoid permanent alliances. But what he's warning about is avoid imperial wars. Washington, knowing the history of what happened in the American colonies, he knew there was constant imperial war in the colonies. And he was part of it in the French and Indian War and the American Revolution. Avoid these wars, avoid foreign entanglements, because once you get involved in imperial wars, you must build up the military, build up your intelligence, and you have more wars. No, I should add, he did not see taking the land for the people who live here as an imperial war. He did not see it that way, but that's what it was. He didn't see it. He wanted this because he wanted to be rich. Washington's an interesting guy. I don't know why I did this as a kind of orange symbol, but I did. So there's continental United States, and by 1853, all that area is the United States had taken. Bought the claim, and then took the land. Got this, got the claim in Spain. Texas became independent. Remember, the U.S. annexed. War, treaty with Great Britain, bought this from Mexico. But the U.S. took the land, defeated the people who lived there, and then made it part of the U.S. We're living in part of it. There. Different than other empires. The last bit, the second to last bit of the United States proper now that would come in would be in 1867. It's the Seward's Folly after William Seward, the Secretary of State. The United States would purchase Russian America for $7.2 million. Russian America, what do we call Russian America today? What? Alaska, yep. I heard a couple people say, I wanted to make sure I got it. I love this map of 1860 of Alaska. They just knew there was land there. They didn't really know. Land, it goes up here, then I don't know. End of the decade, obviously a little better map, or end of the century. This is the check for $7.2 million. I'm just trying to imagine writing a check for $7.2 billion. It was literally a check. And this is mocking it. Here's Seward, and that's President Andrew Johnson. Remember, the president who was impeached, Lincoln's vice president, Democrat, and like they're buying a big chunk of ice. And a lot of people thought at the time that what a stupid buy. Why does the United States want Alaska? Well, we didn't want Britain to get it. But the big reason was this. The only great power in Europe that supported the Union throughout the Civil War was Russia. Russia didn't want it for reasons, for problems within Russia. So we took it off their hands to thank them for helping us. Not so much helping us, but supporting us. So everyone got that is because of the Civil War that the United States bought it. Ironically, Russia was the most autocratic empire in all of Europe. Their Tsar ran Russia alone. The United States is a republic. Britain was closer in that way, but Britain didn't fully support the Union. But in 1898, the chunk of ice got value because what's going to be discovered there in 1897? And the gold rush. Sometimes you might see called the Yukon Gold Rush, the Klondike Gold Rush. Great story. Our president's current fortune would start here. His great grandfather or his grandfather immigrated from Germany. Same as Trump, changed to Trump, but took what little bit of money he had and went up there and started a business in a hotel. And you could believe a lot of money at the right time at a gold rush. And that's how it starts. One of those interesting connections to history today. Great story. So let's get into the reasons for empire. What are the reasons for empire? There is a classic cartoon going into the new century of the new America. After just a few years, it seemed like everything had changed. So there's Washington, D.C., Uncle Sam and Lady Columbia, still represent the United States a lot of the time. And this shows all the elements of the new United States dancing the new America. Worker, businessman, farmer. But look at the other new parts of America that have been added in just a couple years. Cuba, Puerto Rico, which, by the way, Sunday should have reminded a lot of people that there's a lot of Americans who have no idea what their countries even have in it. I could not get over how many people were upset at the halftime show saying we should have Americans. Well, first off, it's from this continent, but secondly, Puerto Ricans are part of the United States. They are American citizens as much as I am, or most people who live here. It's interesting how people can spew stuff like this and get people upset, natives. Interesting. Philippines, Hawaii. Look at the faces. I'll come back to them. Oh, New Year. So New Year is represented by the baby. This is supposed to be like a new century. So it's not just they're not all dancing with a creepy half-naked toddler in front. That's supposed to represent the new year. Empire. So the first reason was the frontier being closed off. The United States have been looking west since the beginning. Remember, Thomas Jefferson obsessed by it. And now the frontier is closed. Almost all the land had been taken. The American Indians have been devastated and forced onto awful reservations. We've covered this before. But there's still an idea to go west. East, you're running into the powerful European states. But the Pacific might be more area for conquest, empire, profit. So that feeling to keep going. Secondly, the Panic of 1893 showed that the United States still must unify. And it's still disunified from the Civil War. Don't forget that. There's still a lot of anger. But Pullman's strike and Coxey's army seemed to convince that the country might be on revolution. And a lot of people believe, hey, wouldn't a good little war help unify the country? This was talked all the time. Bring people together. A good little conflict. But there's something else. Remember the boom bust cycle? You have the boom, speculation. What's the first thing the big thing that happens going down that inflationary curve? Oversupply, overproduction. We were producing more than we could buy. The Panic of 1893 seemed to show people the same thing. We need to trade off our surplus. Therefore, we need an empire. We get an empire, it's a captive market. We make them buy our stuff. And therefore, we have surplus, we sell there, and we get cheaper raw materials. And here's like America, Fortress America, home market, include an empire. Here's international trade going up in the years before World War I. Trade is becoming a better way to get a value added to your products. I should add more and more products being bought overseas and see by the red line. Next, Alfred Thayer Mahan. He would write one of the most important books in history. It's not a great book to read. It's hard to read today, especially the style they wrote. Everyone just called The Influence of Sea Power. So The Influence of Sea Power. But the full title is on history from 1660 to 1783. And in it, he writes how nations became great. Why were there great powers in 1895? What made them great? What happened in those years? So here's a copy of the book. This is the second edition. That's exactly the way you would think Mahan would look. At least that's the way I think he would look. He was commander in the U.S. Navy. He would also become one of the most influential instructors at Annapolis, the U.S. Naval Academy. But he's writing till 1783. As he saw it, everything changed in those years that will give us what we are now. What made countries back in 1660 that were scrambling for power, some were weak, some were strong, nobody dominant? Why in 1660 they were not dominant to become dominant? Why? So, in it he writes, we'll come back to 1783 and the importance of that day. What made countries great is trade. Trade. International trade. Export. So he's mercantilistic. Making what you're good at and selling it and limiting what you can't make. Trade. The problem with this is trade if you're reliant upon somebody else for your raw materials, you're in trouble, or for that matter, protection. So you need an empire. So he's very mercantilist. You need this empire. But once you have an empire, it's now overseas. Almost all trade done over the water, and you are vulnerable to an enemy unless you have a powerful what? Navy. No coincidence that he's in the Navy. You need a Navy. You have to be able to defend your trade routes, and therefore you need bases to defend your trade routes. If you look at this map, it shows, see the highlighted yellow? These are US bases across the Pacific Ocean. So if the US is looking west, and they want to get into the lucrative East Asia, but especially China trade, East Asia to the point of view west, these are important bases. And then look at the big base, but also a lot of people. 1898, the Philippines. Empire, raw materials, protect our trade. And a couple more things. Coal was the main fuel source for ships going into the 20th century. Coal is incredibly important. So you need coaling stations, they were called. You need bases where your ship can get reliable coal supplies. And you can see it right there on the map. Long haul to Hawaii, and now other bases. When the westernmost island of the Hawaiian Islands is a little atoll called Midway. It's called Midway because it's a coaling station midway between Hawaii and another important coaling station, Wake. Those of you who have read ahead in American history might know of a battle called the Battle of Midway. The most important battle in the Pacific in World War II. It's all related to this. You need bases. So you're not relying upon somebody else. If you don't have a powerful navy, you don't have the bases, you have these, or you're at the mercy of a power. And the idea being that if the US doesn't build up a powerful fleet, or other countries, a stronger nation, whenever they want, will cut them off. I should add, that's why they have these areas here. Mahan is saying, we have the Navy. We might have to fight here, we might have to fight here. We got to get here quicker. He's going to push for the building of a canal. We need a canal to get across quick. All these are about a Navy. And this thought was this, okay, we're all going to build up a Navy. That means if there is actually going to be a war about these trade routes and empire, it's going to be, I jumped the gun. It'll be one big battle. I should have done this video. It'll be one big battle. And remember that I told you about the one big battle like Bunker Hill or Bull Run. All these wars, they all thought it'd be one big battle. It never was. But they thought this would be one big battle. A mighty clash of these new super steel armored ships. Battleships, soon to be called dreadnoughts. Now, when this is read by everyone, when they read this at the House of Power in Britain, at the Admiralty in Britain, Brits look at this and say, yeah, this is about us. Because Britain will be the greatest power in the world in the 1890s. Why? Trade and the strongest navy. And ironically, it came after their biggest defeat, one of their biggest defeats. 1783, why is that important? What happened in 1783? What war ended in 1783? The American Revolution. The US won their independence from Britain, but ironically, their knowledge from this and the fleet they had built up would propel them to become the most powerful country. So what did Britain think? Just keep building our navy. And they would soon build a super battleship called a dreadnought. That soon everybody's going to want to have. Who else would read this? Well, the US. The US had been neglecting their fleet. They really hadn't done much since the Civil War. They started building stronger, more modern ships. Why? Trade. Protect our sea lines. And it kind of fits with imperialism, doesn't it? Once you start building weapons, you tend to use them. Next, what other countries read this? Well, there's a lot of countries that might have said, hey, this would be great. We got to build ships. But they didn't have the industrial base. Like Argentina would try. They were a rich country, but they didn't have an industry. They were rich because of agriculture and water. Turkey, Ottoman Empire, too weak. France, strong enough, but France had a mortal enemy. And their population was only 60% of that mortal enemy. So they had to spend every penny they had on land forces. Russia was just entering the Industrial Revolution. It's going to be a while for them to get started. Two other great powers, and they're both brand new great powers that read it more influence. But no? Yeah, Germany. So Germany had the most powerful army in the world. The most powerful army. But they had never been a naval power. But they decided they wanted a naval power. They wanted a piece of cake, as they called it. So they started building ships. This is actually a little bit ironic. Britain and Germany were allies, kind of, because they both hated France. France's mortal enemy was Germany. Once Germany started building a fleet, they began to threaten Britain. Who became friends? Okay, it didn't really become friends. They more quit hating each other as much, Britain and France. So, one more great power, and it's brand new great power. No one really acknowledged it was, but they made themselves. They made everyone know. Who's that? Japan. Japan was rapidly industrializing, and they began to build a powerful fleet and began to expand. Do you see something in expansion here? Do you see it? Last thing for today, do you see it? Let's say Japan starts expanding. The US is expanding. Do you see something coming? Can anyone predict anything? No, I can't. There's nothing to see here. Move on. World War II in the Pacific is one giant war for empire. Virtually every battle was fought on a colony. They're all colonies. It's all empire. World War II in Europe was different. World War II in the Pacific, empire. All empire. And on that happy note, be my presence. I'll tell you a little bit more about the electives. Empire.